absolute fascination. And there was also something about the devilish one. Ms. Cato says, most people have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. Here. When I bring this up, they only watch mainstream TV and they have zero idea what's going on. Oh my God, thank you, Ms. Cato. 100%. People look at you like, uh-huh, yeah. They say, aren't you fine? Sure, yeah. Don't you hear about Charlie? Who? Charlie Kirk? No. Listen, I don't know what to tell you. I've always liked, there's certain things I like. When growing up as a kid, I loved professional wrestling, NWA stuff from the 70s. I don't care if anybody knew what it was, but it was big, right? And then it became cool. When the Real Housewives of New Jersey first came out, not the others, New Jersey, it was a cluster. It was every week. It was like, this is so stupid. And my wife and I said, what are we doing? And it was great. It was like, have you ever eaten something where you...
In a half mile, turn left onto Hiram Douglasville Highway.
Whatever you do, and I don't eat this type of thing, but I Reese's peanut butter cups, frozen, I'm done. I just keep it away from me. I don't care what anybody says. I'll go crazy. I'll lose my mind. And I'm not even a sweeper. That's what this is to me. I don't know why it is. I don't know why that versus this.
Turn left.
I don't know. So many levels. It's like we meet because
continue for 4 miles.
Dragons or something, or we meet, and what I love is it's not. We're all on the same page. You know what I mean? There's. Have you met anybody seriously today who honestly says, "Leave her alone. She's a widow"? Are you meeting? No, that is gone. That thing is gone. It has left the station. There is nobody anymore. Nobody. And as people are catching on, oh my God, have you noticed it? Have you seen? Have you? Other folks are coming along and they're by the way, the research of these people is just absolutely incredible. But the research is terrific. And then you find older versions. And have you noticed that the Erica portrayals kind of grow with, I don't know, but they grow with age. They're beautiful. You know what I mean? You realize it becomes, you think, did somebody fix this? No. This is the way it's always been. She's always been like this? Yes. It seems so blatant. You're thinking, it's always been like this? Always been like this. This is worse than I remember. Worse than I remember. There's Big Dickie Daniels. Yes, Uncle, this bunch is one of a kind. Oh, the best. The best. Wouldn't you, ready for this? Okay, let me tell you something real quick. Oh, by the way, I'd be remiss. Lionel merch. Remember, hey guys, we have merch. Hey guys, it's Lionel Nation merch. Got my picture on. That's my Erica. Hey guys. If we had a convention, here's trouble. Here's Renee. She says, there's some leave her alone folks in the chat right now. Good, welcome, please, welcome. Hey, listen, anybody want to leave her alone? Leave her alone? What do you mean leave her alone? Why doesn't she leave? It'll go away. What do you say? Huh? Leave her? Hey, guys. Are you kidding me? Leave her alone. Listen, everybody's welcome. And be nice. Be cordial. They know not what they do. They don't know what they say. How do you miss this? How do you miss this? I'm keeping track of these, of the, I don't know what you want to call it, the newcomers, the new folks who come along. These incredible folks that are just It's some of the best I've ever seen. The best. Absolutely the best. Oh, and speaking of the best is AD Fleet. Have you seen the latest with this one?
Vamos a ver cómo cambia y se ajusta a mi piel. Aquí está la cinta para que puedan ver.
President Clinton just released his prepared remarks that he is delivering behind closed doors.
There are two things that he is going to emphasize. One, he is going to deny any wrongdoing on his part.
In a half mile, turn left onto Enclave Drive.
About Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. He also previewed in his opening remarks that he was often going to answer questions with the words, "I don't recall."
That's right. Former President Bill Clinton, he sat down before the House Oversight Committee today as part of the committee's probe into Jeffrey Epstein. And as you just heard, he is prepared to deny that he saw anything or did anything illegal.
Now we are going to play an interview.
Turn left onto Enclave Drive.
I don't want to go anywhere because Whitney Webb is really fascinating. And in this clip, we talk about P. Diddy and Jeffrey Epstein. And
Continue for a half mile.
It's going to be great. And then at the very end, I'll say goodbye, and I'll probably show a clip or two related to this discussion. And I will also read the super chat. So I will see you guys in right after the Whitney interview. Okay, so without any further ado, Whitney Webb. Excited to be joined by Whitney Webb, the journalist. She's a contributing editor to Unlimited Hangout. She's also the author of One Nation Under Blackmail. Welcome, Whitney.
Hey, Katie. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, we are really happy to have you on. And as I've said, the people have been demanding you as a guest.
In a quarter mile, 479 Indian Trail Drive, Powder Springs, Georgia 30127, USA will be on the left.
Sean Diddy Combs. And, you know, you don't usually write about kind of celebrity culture. So I wanted to start off by asking you, and it's really fascinating, by the way, but I wanted to start off by asking you what made you want to write about this?
Yeah, so originally I was just going to write about one aspect of the Diddy case that I thought was interesting, which was his relationship with the supermodel Naomi Campbell, mainly because I had
479 Indian Trail Drive, Powder Springs, Georgia 30127, USA is on the left.
That I hadn't published yet, involving her and Epstein, and so I thought it would be interesting to explore how she sort of intersects both worlds. But then, you know, in doing that, kind of
I used to spray this house. Looks like the same person that lived here when I sprayed it.
To be had, including the current president, among other figures, Ron Burkle being another one. So it seems worth exploring at least that broader network. And, you know, a lot of the people, you know, oligarch figures that pop up in my book, the Bronfman family, for example, had an outsized influence on the record industry and on hip hop in the 1990s and beyond. And some of that intersects with other aspects of my Epstein research that I sort of explore with my co-author, CZ Means, at the end of, you know, this first article. Hopefully it'll be a 3-part series, but, you know, sometimes these things run a little long. You know, we tend to do long form journalism at Unlimited Hangout anyway, so it might be more than 3, but some of my past stuff sort of on things that were going on in the 1990s and in the world of covert ops. Some of this unusual activity in the hip hop industry with allegations made by Gary Webb in his Dark Alliance series, and some of this, you know, what I wrote about in my book, One Nation Under Blackmail, about Epstein's apparent involvement in arms trafficking during the first Clinton administration, what his 17 visits to the Clinton White House were about, and, you know, why he had assisted on behalf of his, you know, main patron, Leslie Wexner, relocating the Southern Air Transport airline, which had previously been CIA owned and had been the main Iran-Contra airline that had been involved in drug and arms trafficking for the benefit of the Contras in Nicaragua, how that was sort of repurposed in this period and sort of had teamed up with these corrupt actors in China's military industrial complex to basically flood urban America with illegal assault weapons, which is not really something that it's talked about a lot, but I've always thought is a pretty important
Tonight
piece
I've been
of the
going
puzzle and talking about, you know, this
DoorDash
alleged
has been
effort that's
taking me a
touched
lot
on
of
here of
places
sort
where I
of
used to do the pest control.
engineering a cultural
Little
shift
bit
for the
weird.
purpose of, for the benefit of the private prison industry. And so there's an exploration of
Little
that
bit
as it
weird, but
relates
it's
to
all right.
this piece.
so funny because it's like just, I don't know, in the minute response you gave, it's like you could make 5 books out of the various things that you mentioned.
Yeah, well, trying not to do that, but there are obviously references to my book. So, you know, if you want to know more about some of the things I mentioned, you know, there's references in the piece to keep it from being a book, right now to the book I've already written that touches on some of these things. But, you know,
I have it. I'm looking off to the side because I have it, but I don't know which room it's in. I have 2 like bookshelves. So, but it's a great. It's actually, you know, how long is it?
Well, it's almost 1,000 pages because there's 2 of them.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's surprisingly or not surprisingly, given the subject matter, like it's pretty. You know, it's not like it's a page turner. You know, lots of times like I get a lot of books sent to people, which is great. And it's like, oh God, I have to catch up with this reading. And, you know, if you're out there listening to this and I've asked you for a book, of course, I'm very grateful and I do read them. But it's nice that when you get a really long one, that it's actually very engaging. Sometimes the stuff, I mean, it's disturbing, but it's so interesting that you just want to keep reading. So.
Sure. I mean, I thought it was interesting enough to research and write all that about it. So I'm glad people feel that way about reading it as well. But basically, you know, in a nutshell, the interest in the Diddy case was similar to my interest in the Epstein case initially, in that, you know, the way the media narrative is about these cases is sort of, you know, very focused on either Diddy or Epstein, and like they were the mastermind of all of this stuff. And these people never exist in a vacuum. They tend to have significant moneyed benefactors that somehow evade persecution or even investigation. That's very obvious in the Epstein case, but I think it's also pretty true as it relates to, you know, the Diddy case as well. And, you know, he learned this behavior that he's now, you know, in prison for and awaiting trial for from, you know, various other figures that have somehow evaded the kind of charges that now face Diddy. And why is that? So the series is meant to sort of explore that, and also, you know, how this broader, I guess, oligarch network that also has a lot of ties to the Epstein situation sort of pop up in the record industry with direct connections to Bad Boy Records and Bad Boy Entertainment and some of these other business ventures of Sean Combs.
Right. And also, you know, I'm not sure how much my audience follows this, but do you mind giving just this, for people who don't, can you give history of what he's being accused of, the state of the trial, and any relevant information you think it's important to know or understand? Sure.
So I'm not, the series probably isn't going to include stuff that would, you know, sort of be more and I think his trial is due to start in May. He stands accused of operating what's been called by AP, you know, an empire of sex crimes.
Continue on Georgia 92 for 4 miles.
Similarities in the charges in some ways to the Epstein and also the Ghislaine Maxwell cases. But what's interesting, though, is that, you know, whereas with Epstein and Maxwell, it was sort of the FBI and SDNY leading, the Diddy cases had a lot of involvement from the Department of Homeland Security, which is kind of unusual, it seems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting also to, as a native New Yorker, it's interesting to hear about the different places he had like gone to school and lived and moved. And then we'll get it when we talk about Epstein. I don't know if you know what high school I went to, but guess what high school I went to?
Oh, the same one as him. Or where he taught.
Yeah, exactly. Dalton.
Continue on Georgia 92 for 3 miles.
By the way, I was re-listening because your book is also great as an audiobook, but I was re-listening to it. It's just there's even a virus, right? Epstein-Barr or Barr-Epstein virus.
Yeah, it's Epstein-Barr, but unrelated to the.
I know. It's just funny.
The Donald Bill Barr,
yeah.
You know, and Epstein thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, what are the? What is he being accused of? Your article not only kind of details his violent and abusive rise, but his mentors who helped him, who kind of molded him, such as Clive Davis and Russell Simmons. Can you tell us more about these figures and kind of, I guess, the network behind them?
Yeah. So Clive Davis in particular is the person that is really credited with allowing Bad Boy Records to be a success because, they really wouldn't have been successful if they didn't enter into that very early distribution and promo deal with Clive Davis's Arista Records, when they were created. And this is also true of, his mentor, Andre Harrell at Uptown Records. Uptown Records wouldn't have been successful if it wasn't for their distribution deal with MCA, for example, which is now Universal Studios. I think the same is true for Russell Simmons' label Def Jam, but I think in their case it was CBS Records, which is also related to sort of the Clive Davis story. Clive Davis was, at sort of the at a major post within the CBS recording subsidiaries. He got involved in this major payola scandal, which is basically, generally payola is when there's bribery to get, singles of a particular artist or a particular label played more on certain stations, which is illegal. But in the case of Clive Davis, it was payola basically tied to a heroin ring, and his top assistant, his main aide, was known for sort of being a fixer at the label and supplying, these stations they were, allegedly bribing, and also just other people, artists, under the label and whatever, with drugs, with prostitutes, with all sorts of things. Clive Davis arguably evaded charges for that. He got let go of CBS. Why it was kind of hot. The investigation argued because they didn't want any of the scandal beyond the payola aspect to come back and bite the company in the butt, basically. And it was that heroin ring, by the way, was tied to organized crime interests, mainly I believe the Genovese crime family, which had kind of a long and storied history in the music industry through Roulette Records and figures like Morris Levy, who, for example, funded the first hip-hop label, Sugar Hill. And so, there's basically been this organized crime effort to dominate those particular labels for some time. And David stands accused of people that were once close to, Combs and later became rivals, like Suge Knight, and also his former bodyguard Gene Deal, of sort of training Diddy in this using drugs and sex to control people. And also allegedly Russell Simmons of Def Jam engaged in that same type of behavior and sort of mentored Diddy in that, because Russell Simmons was obviously important, not just for Diddy, but also for Andre Harrell at Uptown Records. And that's how, that Diddy, Sean Combs, first entered the music industry. And Russell Simmons is interesting for a few reasons. One of the reasons I point out that it hasn't really gotten a lot of coverage is his very early connection in the 1990s. Obviously, Def Jam was successful by then. He became very involved with this guy who later became a famous Hollywood director named Brett Ratner, who, along with Simmons, has been
in a half mile, turn right toward Powder Springs.
So now Simmons is in Indonesia, evading charges, and Ratner immigrated to Israel to avoid lawsuits related to sex assault. They're both accused separately and accused of engaging in that type of activity together. And Ratner's kind of an interesting figure, at least in recent years, because he teamed up with Steve Mnuchin's Hollywood studio to create, through his...
Turn right toward Powder Springs. Then, in 900 feet, 4560 Jimmy Lee Smith Parkway, Hiram, Georgia 30141, USA will be on the right.
Currently, a lot of that is, kind of...
Drive north.
The piece, but there's a lot there to pick
Drive
on.
east. Then, in 300 feet, turn
was basically offered the opportunity to immigrate to Israel.
Turn left.
Netanyahu, because a week before he did so, he was Netanyahu's guest of honor at the UN alongside Alan Dershowitz, the former Epstein defense lawyer. So quite an interesting array of special guests to have.
Drive north, then turn left.
And Ratner and Packer were actually recently...
Drive east, then turn right.
And apparently Ratner is trying to make his Hollywood comeback after...
Turn right, then turn left. Drive north, then turn left.
Sex assault claims against him.
Not bad.
Drive east, then
a Trump documentary that's supposed to air on Amazon at the end of the year, on which Melania is an executive producer. So
That would be really objective.
yeah, and then oddly around the same time, James Packer buys this property neighboring Mar-a-Lago in Florida that had previously been reserved for the Secret Service and close friends of the of the Trump family. So interesting that a major figure in the Netanyahu corruption trial.
Thank you for
became
choosing Zach.
Netanyahu's
Hiram,
neighbor, and that's
Jen
part of
speaking.
what
Would
the
you like to try our
charges about is
questionnaire?
now kind of repeating the same
I'd love
thing.
to, but I'm just
One of
getting
the
a
reasons I think
DoorDash.
Brett Ratner is
I
one of
need,
the
what's
reasons
the
this
name?
came up with Russell Simmons
Betsy.
is interesting is because Brett Ratner is very much
Betsy?
involved with
Yeah.
sort
Okay,
of
you can
the
pull around.
heir to
Thank you.
Mayor
Thank
Lansky.
you.
Al Malnick, who's this Miami businessman, who's basically credited, by mainstream media too, as inventing this way for Lansky and sort of other mobster bank figures like Tibor Rosenbaum, developing these ways to sort of launder money for organized crime from illicit into legitimate ventures, and created these banks in the Bahamas and all of that to do so. And Ratner is their adopted son and adopted father. They're like very, very, very close. They have a lot of weird ties also, the two of them, to Michael Jackson's final years. And according to Jackson, an attempt to sort of take away his stake in the Beatles music catalog, and a lot of really weird industry stuff there. But basically, the ties to organized crime are pretty extensive. Brett Ratner claims to have been walked home from school and middle school personally by Lansky.
How are
Doesn't
you?
really make a lot of sense.
Doing well, thank you. Oh, hold up. Just sorry. Got another one.
Significant. So,
Yeah.
Drive north,
Going
then turn
fishing.
left.
For DoorDash.
Organized crime ties.
Thanks.
And, honestly,
All right,
and
God bless you.
I try and make this pretty clear in my book as well. Organized crime, despite the public perception that's been developed, did not magically disappear in the 60s and the 70s and 80s. Arguably, it went in the organized crime figures rebranded as philanthropists and as multinational corporations and as oligarchs. And because of the system that was developed allegedly by Malnick, but also others, they're able to sort of launder money from illicit into these legitimate ventures. And so that illicit money pumps up these legitimate ventures and allows them to become hugely successful and dominate their respective industries. Among other things, are buyout competitors and consolidate. And because of, a lot of the legislation that was passed in the Reagan, Bush, and Clinton eras, and so on, industry consolidation was allowed to progress to points that were previously unthinkable in the United States, creating, basically quasi semi-monopolies in a lot of our
Turn right onto US 278, Georgia 6.
clique of oligarchs who dominate the country now.
In a quarter mile, take the exit on the left toward JCPenney.
Fascinating, and kind of overwhelming because the connections are so unending. But what about Harold? You forewarn of an important point that caught my attention. You write, mob-linked entertainment companies, in this case Warner Brothers, financing the glorification of drug dealing around 1991. So can you elaborate on this for us? And is there a pattern, do you think, of drug glorification by mob-linked media?
So basically what the piece argues is that a lot of the biggest media companies that were doing this, sort of have a lot of connections to the same organized crime and really intelligence linked network. And this is typified by MCA, but also Warner Brothers is very involved. So as I noted in the piece, the longtime head of Warner Brothers, Steve Ross, built up his company that
Take the exit on the left toward JCPenney, then turn left.
Willman and some other figures of, New York organized crime. And, and around the time, all of this was going on.
Turn left.
Maxwell's yacht, and he was yucking it up with a lot of other organized crime intelligence linked figures, of which Maxwell was one. But of course, MCA is probably the most notorious in this regard as well. Lou Wasserman, for example, their most famous and storied executive, very intimately connected to mobsters like Mo
In
Dowd.
300 feet, turn right.
The Department of Justice was investigating MCA for its organized crime ties, but because MCA
Turn right.
was so essential to the political rise of Ronald Reagan, the Reagan administration quashed the
In 400 feet, turn right.
MCA's ties to organized crime, which are very extensive, and also
Even
MCA
Reagan's
right.
involved.
Then 5077 Jimmy Lee Smith Parkway, Suite 113, Hiram, Georgia 30141. USA will be on the right.
And what's interesting here, and what I sort of note in the piece, is that there's allegations from a couple sources that beginning in
Drive north,
1991,
Then turn left.
Efforts within the music industry to culturally engineer hip hop to promote violence for the purpose of benefiting private prison corporations. And some of those allegations have been
Ain't true.